A 17-year-old Fort Myers teen recently died from COVID-19 complications after her mother first took her to a party with 100 people where she got sick and then had refused medical treatment until later and instead treated her with hydroxychloroquine. So now the teenager, Carson Davis, was a cancer survivor with a rare ongoing autoimmune disorder who died of respiratory failure after contracting coronavirus in early June. So, look, this is a devastating story. I'm going to try to be as careful as possible. But I think it's a good example of the danger of misinformation going around during the pandemic. So now we find this out according to a Florida medical examiner's report that reported on Carson's death. Davis had attended a 100-person church event where people were not asked to wear masks or do any sort of social distancing. And that happened 2 weeks before she died in a Miami-Dade hospital. Now, local media, of course, had reported on this before at the end of June, but now it's being revisited after data scientist Rebecca Jones called attention to the medical examiner's findings in her own report. Now, Jones looked at this, and by the way, Jones had oversaw the Florida Department of Health's COVID-19 dashboard. She was removed from her position in May as Florida started to reopen because of what she was reporting. So now on Monday, Jones told Newsweek that she had found the medical examiner's report on Davis's death while conducting research for Florida COVID victims in an effort to document them, since the state no longer wants to do that, right? They're not interested in documenting coronavirus deaths because of political reasons. So that makes Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump look bad. And so, well, they don't want that to happen, especially since Biden is now taking a lead in Florida. So there are a lot of people in Florida that are very unhappy with not only DeSantis, but Donald Trump as well for his response to the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. So now she said, I was validating death data between the medical examiner's reports, the Department of Health's caseline data, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's reports as part of a larger project to find deaths that may have been removed from DOH's case data when I found the report about Carson Davis. I started looking into her mother, the church where the COVID party was held with more than 100 children, her health history, and who she was, and I felt so angry and sad that this happened. Davis was, of course, a member at the congregation at Fort Myers First Assembly of God. That church, of course, held a party on June 10th, and it had, like I said, over 100 people and did not enforce mass and social distancing. Now, originally, it was reported to be a COVID party, right? That is not correct. It was actually not a COVID party. A COVID party is actually something different, where people go to these parties to willingly infect each other in order to, I guess, build up a tolerance or herd immunity or something like that, which has been shown to not be the case, as antibodies tend to, at least according to new studies, the antibodies disappear after a while, making it so that you can't really build up a herd immunity to it. So I want to be very, very clear on that, that it's not a COVID party. It was just a party, right? But again, they were irresponsible as they invited over 100 people and didn't enforce any sort of guidelines like mask wearing. That led, of course, Carson to contract the virus and begin showing symptoms within the next couple of weeks. During the 9 days that followed, she was given a course of antibiotics, as well as hydroxychloroquine and oxygen via her grandfather's portable machine by her parents while she were at home. So they did not immediately take her to the hospital. They began a home treatment of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, I believe. Azithromycin. That is the antibiotic that they also pair with hydroxychloroquine. Her mother is a nurse and had taken care of her during that time. And she believed that this course of antibiotics and hydroxychloroquine would be effective. It turns out to have not been effective. Later on, the hospital had recommended intubation when Davis was admitted to its pediatric unit on June 19th, but her parents declined the procedure, as is, of course, their right to do so. But she ended up, of course, going back on June 22nd to receive plasma therapy and was eventually intubated, but died one day later. So, Jesus. Look, I'm not saying that there was a guarantee that if she had been treated earlier the right way, that she would have survived. COVID-19 is incredibly nasty. She had, of course, an autoimmune disorder, was a cancer survivor. So she already had a lot of things that were stacked against her. And so it is deadly. But it's a possibility that early enough treatment in the right way could have saved her life as well. We don't necessarily know. But what I know is that it all goes back to the original bad decision of going to a party at a church and not taking any sort of precautions, and instead relying on hydroxychloroquine. Now, that said, right, there's a new study out that was actually published in the International Society of Infectious Disease, and it was conducted in Michigan hospitals. And it did find that hydroxychloroquine was actually more successful than previously stated. And so let me give you some of the information that I have on that. Now, the study had analyzed 2,541 patients hospitalized among the system's 6 hospitals. This is again in Detroit. Between March 10th and May 2nd, it found that 13% of those treated with hydroxychloroquine died, while 26% of those who did not receive the drug also died. Right. So more people who were not treated with this drug ended up dying, but more people treated with the drug didn't die. So among all patients in the study, there was an overall in-hospital mortality rate of 18%. Many who died had underlying conditions that put them at greater risk, according to the Henry Ford Health System. Now, globally, the mortality rate for hospitalized patients is between 10 and 30%, and it's 58% among those in the intensive care unit or have been on a ventilator. Patients with a median age of 64 were among those analyzed, with 51% of men and 56% African American. Roughly 82% of the patients began receiving hydroxychloroquine within 24 hours and 91% within 48 hours, a factor that Dr. Marcus Zervos identified as a potential key to success. So they say, well, if you give it early. Well, a lot of the risk factors that are included in this, other than the autoimmune disorders, Davis didn't have. She was only 17 years old. So she was fairly young. And so, if you're younger, you generally have better success at, surviving COVID-19. But at the same time, she did have that autoimmune disorder. She did have had survived cancer as well. And so had numerous health problems surrounding that. And so there's no guarantee that a hydroxychloroquine early, like evidenced in this study, would have actually done anything to save her life. And so we don't necessarily know, right? In fact, Zervos cautioned against extrapolating the results for treatment outside of hospital settings and without further study. And so that was one thing that Davis's parents had done, is do this outside of a hospital setting in their home. And so does that make a difference? I don't know. I don't know if it would have made a difference. It seems to me like it would have. Like it would have made a huge difference had she had been treated in the hospital. And so this again goes back to really, really bad decisions. Numerous bad decisions. I mean, why would you take your immunocompromised daughter to a 100-person party without a mask? Especially in a state that is now, and has been for several weeks, seeing large increases, large spikes in coronavirus cases. Why would you do that? If that were my kid, no way in hell. I wouldn't do that. I mean, and understand here, this isn't, we're not dealing with uneducated people. Her mother was a nurse, educated in medical stuff, and yet I think her identity, her political identity, as a Christian right-wing Trump supporter, again, this is my assumption, right, might have outweighed that. I mean, did she believe that Donald Trump when he said that hydroxychloroquine was an effective treatment outside of a hospital setting? Remember, he used to say, well, just go ahead and take it and it will protect you from getting coronavirus. Well, there's no evidence supporting that. In fact, that's what the Henry Ford Health System is looking into, whether or not it could be effective. So far, we don't know. But there is some evidence, according to this brand new study, that says that it is effective for treatment later on. And so, or at least more effective in reducing the death tolls. And so, I don't know, man. It's all I can say is that this person made a lot of bad decisions, and now a young person is dead, a teenager. And so the fact that she ignored what experts were saying, and that fact ultimately led to her daughter's death. And so I think this is the price of misinformation. I mean, again, she wasn't uninformed. She was misinformed. You have Fox News. You got the president of the United States. You got anti-maskers. You got conspiracy theorists. All of those people, they lied and people died. They put out misinformation, knowing that it was misinformation in a lot of different cases, and now people have died because of it. And you've got governors that are hiding the real death toll in Florida because they don't want to make Donald Trump look bad politically. This isn't a political issue. Hydroxychloroquine it should be a political issue. We should look at whether or not it actually works. Earlier studies said it doesn't work and that it causes massive heart problems. I've reported on that. This study now says, well, those other studies weren't peer-reviewed. This one is at the Henry Ford Health System, and we say that it is actually more effective and doesn't cause heart issues. Well, where's the truth in that? I don't necessarily know. That's why we need more studies to continue to corroborate this, to find out. Because, look, I'm one of those people that my mind can be changed if the correct evidence were presented, right? If there's evidence overwhelmingly that supports this, then yes, I will report that because that's reality, right? And there's no political agenda behind this. I just want whatever works the best to be prescribed to people to save people's lives. That's not Donald Trump's intention, right? I don't think that's Donald Trump's intention. I don't think that's Ron DeSantis's intention. I don't think it's the anti-maskers' intention, right? No, I think their intention is probably self-motivated. And so it's, one of those things that you really need to be careful about. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.